back to this one after the first department. Is that enough time, colleagues? Yeah? Okay, great. Also on Friday, I asked members to take a look at the memo list and prioritize which memos you'd like to get out first and foremost, so the departments and the CAO know which we want released ASAP. This obviously won't include priorities from the departments we hear today. We also assume if a memo has the potential to increase the general fund, so bring in additional revenues, or is a review of potential offsets proposed by departments, these will be prioritized. So for today, we'll have to approve the draft memo list before we go into recess for 2 days. So I'll ask members to note priorities from today's departments when we approve today's memo list. We'll just go through and sort of the ones that increase general fund or that are the potential offsets, we don't need to flag. But if there are things that aren't either of those that you want to highlight as being particularly important, let's make sure we do that. And we'll do that after the first department. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. We think it's going to make the most sense to read out the department and the memo number. My staff will capture everyone's list and circulate it with the CAO and CLA and relevant departments. So we're going to do this after our first department to give everyone some additional time. Okay? Also, there's a list of proposed memos that could be transitioned into special studies. They require some additional work to try and alleviate the large number of memos. We're going to have CAO distribute that prospective list for review and make sure everyone's cool with some of those moves from memo to special study. Okay? Clear as mud? All right. We're going to turn now to our first department, Los Angeles World Airports, or LAWA. Welcome to the table. Welcome. Go ahead and please introduce yourself and your team. And I understand you have a brief presentation.
Yes. Good morning, Chair Yaroslavsky and members of the Budget, Finance, and Innovation Committee. My name is John Ackermen, and I am honored to serve Los Angeles as the CEO of Los Angeles World Airports. I'm joined at the table today by Marla Blevins, our Chief Airport Administrative Officer, and we're here to discuss our fiscal year 2026 proposed budget and opportunities to support the city during these difficult times. As I shared at the Trade, Travel, and Tourism Committee on April 22nd, LAWA itself is financially very, very strong. We are structured well for volatility. In late March, LAWA successfully priced $1.6 billion of revenue bonds, the largest sale ever for LAX. Despite challenging market conditions, we maintain a high credit rating, one of the highest for airports in the U.S. But while Los Angeles World Airports itself is strong, our industry and our local and global partners are facing significant challenges, and these headwinds are building. LAWA is not part of the general fund, and our finances are separate from the city of Los Angeles by federal law. The billions of dollars it takes each year to operate and maintain our airport must be earned from things like parking, commercial real estate, rental cars, dining, shopping, and of course fees paid by our critical airline partners. We receive no money from the general fund, and in the past 10 years have contributed approximately $1 billion in reimbursements for city services that include LAFD, LAPD, and more. As we execute our $30 billion investment program, we expect that number will continue to grow. Our planned budget is fiscally prudent and focuses on ensuring the safety and security of our airports, maintaining efficient operations, supporting the opening of our train, and investing wisely to welcome the world to LAX and Van Nuys airports and deliver Los Angeles the gold medal airports it deserves. Highlights from our 2026 budget include operating expenses are projected to be $1.29 billion, a 9% increase due to higher staffing related and contractual costs. Our enplanements, the passengers coming to our airports, are projected to be down by 13% relative to 2019, as our numbers have yet to rebound to pre-COVID levels. And challenging times for both domestic and international tourism have forced us to project lower passenger numbers for 2025 than we had last year in 2024. We will continue with our $30 billion investment plan to transform LAX, with approximately $15 billion of future projects planned, employing thousands of Angelenos. And I want to thank our labor partners that are helping us deliver these projects that will transform our airports. Recently, City Council approved the most recent of 4 multiple award task order contracts, or MATOCs, which now total more than $6 billion and will provide the agility and velocity needed to complete transformational projects like complete transformational projects like reimagining the Central Terminal area, rebuilding Terminal 5, enhancing the guest experience, and investing in our aging infrastructure, all of which are in process right now. We also plan to open our train early next year. LAWA's prudent decision-making and our resilient financial model have put us on sound financial footing, but we still face economic and financial risks, and expectations for our future are uncertain. We are the 3rd highest cost airport in the United States for airlines, which impacts our competitiveness. In fact, we're already struggling as the 97th worst recovered airport out of the top 100 in the United States. All of this puts additional pressure on our partners as they rely on passenger volumes to fuel their business. It might be okay to be the highest cost provider if you're delivering best-in-class revenue, but if the revenue dries up, costs can impair a business quickly. And when we say impair a business, we're really talking about people. People like our local partners who own many of these businesses, many of them Angelenos who have been with us for decades, and of course the employees who rely on these businesses to take care of their families. Tourism numbers also paint a concerning picture right now. California tourism fell in February and March, particularly from Canada and Mexico, with Canadian air tourism down over 15% and Mexican tourism down 24%. Even worse, flight bookings from Canada to the U.S. fell by over 70% in early 2025, prompting airlines to cut more than 300,000 seats from LAX through October. What does this mean for the year to come? The LA Tourism and Convention Bureau is anticipating year-over-year reductions in total international visitors to LA by between 25 and 30%. While these projections are sobering, it is when times are toughest that we must work together to see how we can help one another and find opportunities in our challenges. Right now, LAWA can be helpful to our city partners during this difficult budget time, and we're already having conversations with key city leaders. I am privileged to lead a hardworking team of 3,000 men and women. However, we were still down in some areas of our staffing by almost 20% compared to pre-pandemic numbers, a function of our sclerotic city personnel system that prevents us from hiring efficiently, but in this case will allow us to be helpful in absorbing talented city team members who can contribute to our success. Marla and I are working with the CAO and the personnel general manager to identify opportunities for LAWA to absorb city teammates who would otherwise be laid off, to help fill our open positions and give us the talent we need to reach our goals. We don't have an exact number or classification of positions we can absorb yet, as we need to work through other factors such as potential exposure to bumping of our existing employees, but we do know that we can and we will be helpful here. We have also identified 48 positions at LAWA that are staffed by police, unlike other airports and agencies like LAPD that use civilians for these roles. These positions include assigning fleet vehicles, checking batteries and equipment, operating our lost and found, and other duties that are handled by civilians elsewhere and should be done by civilians at LAWA. It is critical that we return these officers to duties that will better use their years of police knowledge, skills, and training to help us keep our guests and employees as safe and secure as possible. These changes will generate the police resources needed to secure our new train and rental car center, and will also allow us to grow our crisis intervention team, which has had remarkable success providing compassionate services to unhoused individuals and others in need of assistance. If we can complete these changes quickly, it will also allow us to backfill as many of these positions as possible with civilians that will otherwise be laid off, potentially including some of the hundreds of LAPD civilians whose skills could be aligned with our positions. Our LAXPD, all first responders, have something inside that calls them to serve others, to even risk their life for others. Our common sense plan returns our police to the public where they were called to serve and prevents hardworking city employees from being laid off. We carefully studied our operational needs to ensure we could meet the challenges ahead, and we began the process with our union 6 weeks ago, and we hope we can conclude the process soon enough to have an impact on the broader city of Los Angeles. LAWA can also reduce impacts on other city departments by absorbing employees and taking on work to free up city workers for other critical projects. We look forward to sharing ideas to reduce cost and create efficiencies in hiring, procurement, and planning at LAWA while easing our burden on the city. For instance, on the personnel and hiring side, LAWA loses qualified staff members due to the amount of time it takes to hire. Hiring can take anywhere from 4 to 6 months depending on the position. On the permitting side, we must routinely receive approvals from 10 city agencies whose permitting policies, timelines, and available resources do not meet the needs of the delivery method of our construction practices. We're looking at ways in which we can streamline the process, reduce the burden on the city workforce, reduce the monetary impacts, and delegate permitting and certification authority to LAWA, a win for everybody involved, including this city. These are just examples of the ideas we'll be offering that will help us create a more modern, efficient, and sensible system that will also reduce cost and drain on the city's workforce. Team LAWA is committed to being a part of the solution to the city's budget challenges. Many LAWA employees are asking, how can I help Los Angeles? My answer to them is to stay focused on our mission, stay focused on safety, stay focused on excellence in everything we do. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to start with Councilmember McCosker to lead us off with questions.
Thanks very much. I appreciate the presentation and the opportunity recently when you came into Triple T to hear many of these same issues. I want to go back to a couple of things that you just highlighted, though. On hiring and the difficulty in hiring up, is it related at all to the PCH process, or is this you just going through the normal difficulties of being able to hire into the airport through the personnel department?
I don't know what the PCH process is, so I'm going to defer to Mike.
You're not part of the critical hiring plan. You don't have to go to the...
No.
The answer is no. I didn't think so. So you're not in the critical hiring process, and so you have the ability to hire just normally to fill your positions through personnel. Can you just unpack for a minute why it takes so long?
I mean, just generally speaking, the nature of hiring or onboarding employees with civil service lists, waiting for a list to be put together, the certification process. I know for us at LAWA, we have additional background checks that we have to do because we're in an airport environment. And then there are some instances where we have to seek additional approvals downtown if we're hiring someone outside of the city, if we want to do an advanced step hire that requires additional approvals from downtown as well. Sometimes there are positions that we don't currently have, and we have to get permission from the personnel department to have those positions allocated. And all of this takes time to...
Is it particularly difficult because you have unique classes? I mean, I would think that common classifications like maintenance supervisor and caretaker and custodial would be citywide lists. Is it the case that you have unique classes that are hard to hire into or hard to get lists put together and tests?
Sometimes, organized? Yes. I mean, if there is an airport-specific classification and, downtown is going to prioritize positions that are citywide, like a maintenance supervisor, as opposed to maybe a classification that only serves 10 people at the airport. And so that is, a challenge. I mean, we recently onboarded a couple of executives, and that process took like 6 or 7 months just to get the approval and then bringing them on to the team.
And that will be also a unique challenge when we take up your generous offer to make sure that folks can move from general city services or general fund into LAWA. We will need to understand those unique classes versus the common classes, where it'll be easier for the common classes for us to be able to move folks over. And I take your point that you want to also make sure you're protecting your own employees, longtime employees, to make sure they don't get bumped. And we need to work through that issue. Are we working with personnel yet on these issues? First, to put together the list of how many vacancies. Secondly, in what classifications and where we could prioritize being able to move folks from one position in the common class to your position in the common class?
We absolutely are working. And it's at the highest level. I mean, it's myself, Ms. Blevins, Mr. Zabo, Ms. Billups. I mean, it is the senior leaders of all the relevant departments have been on multiple phone calls during this process, and we have more scheduled.
Well, it sounds like we kind of have a little nuance on that answer. Did you want to speak to it? No. I want to move over to LAPD. You raised the issue of the LAPD personnel that are providing services to LAWA, for which LAWA reimburses, which is the important part of this calculation. But you described sworn officers conducting work that could be done by civilians. And I just want to get a deeper take on that. Is that work that could be done by civilians, but civilians within LAPD? Are we talking about your desire to have that be done by civilians who are LAWA employees?
If I misspoke, I apologize. We do have LAPD officers that we pay for and that do perform services for us through MOUs that we have with LAPD. What I'm talking about right now is within our within our own LAX Police Department, we've identified through a study 48 positions that are currently being done by sworn officers that are done in many other places, most other places by civilians. And what we hope to do is have civilians do that work so we could return those police officers to the policing work that they showed up for.
Return LAWA police officers back to their work and then free up those civilian positions for civilians.
That is correct. And the nexus to LAPD council member is that in this budget crisis, if we can complete this process soon enough, and we would have those positions where we could potentially absorb some of the LAPD civilians that are slated to be laid off in the current budget proposals. So we're hopeful that we could take some of those because they should have a lot of the same skill sets, and it's not my area of expertise. But I've been informed that we should be able to absorb some of those people and prevent them from being put on the streets with no job.
Great. I appreciate that point, and I'm glad I asked. So, because we are not talking about reducing the amount of LAPD work that is being done at the airport. This would be the wrong year to consider that.
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, we're actually going to be doing a little bit more work with LAPD. Chief McDonald and our teams have worked together. We've identified other work that we can do that is going to help our mission and help LAPD.
Excellent. I want to go to one of the comments you made, if I may, Madam Chair. I want to go to one of the comments you made about our airport, our LAX, being on the 97th most recovered airport post-pandemic. Can you unpack what that means? It doesn't sound good, and so it had the desired effect that you intended for both truthfulness and for concern, but can you unpack what that means?
So
what are the criteria? By what measurements are we not recovered?
Thank you for the question. What I was referring to is if you looked at the 100 busiest airports by traffic, and that's by passengers, it's kind of how airports measure themselves by the number of passengers that came through here. If you look at the baseline of 2019 and then see how those airports have done since 2019, this year we're about 12% below. We're probably going to drop another point or two due to the projections we just made. So, our business is 12 to 14% smaller than it was in 2019. Our competitors, many of them are 15 to 20 points bigger than 2019. So we have a more than 30-point gap in the most important thing for airports, the number of passengers that are coming through. And those passengers are important because they're the ones who buy hamburgers and rent cars and buy all of the services that our workers are providing. So if the passengers go down, it harms all of those businesses that rely on the footfall and the volumes. So it's a critical measure. And there are only 3 airports out of the top 100 in the country pre-pandemic that are doing worse than us. We're number 97 out of 100.
So the type of revenue that passengers create are passenger facility charges, I would imagine, and then purchases at our facilities. And I suppose also taking it logically, as passengers increase, numbers of flights increase, and then your restricted revenue, I'll call it, that comes directly from the airlines for their operations increases. And before I get too deep into something I don't understand, can you tell me what is the sort of the ratio of restricted funds, stuff that's controlled by grant assurances and by federal law that you have to spend on certain things like physical improvements, and how does that compare to the amount of discretionary revenue, if you will? What is your breakdown of restricted versus discretionary revenue? Sort of general fund versus special fund if you were on this side of the table.
Sure. So we actually have no unrestricted revenue. 100% of our revenue is required by federal law to be spent on the airport for airport purposes. There are no exceptions to that. When we accept grant money from the federal government, and in some years it could be as little as $10 or $20 million, and if we have a major project, it could be over $100 million. But when we accept that money, like any federal grant money, for anybody who accepts grant money, there are grant assurances attached to that, and those grant assurances run with that grant, and there are legal restrictions on that. So I think that we're talking about two different things, if I understand your question correctly.
I think I was inarticulate in the way I asked it. I mean, I'm aware, similar to the port and similar to the DWP, that there are restrictions on making sure that the enterprise funds are spent on the enterprise, the proprietary funds are spent on that proprietary activity. But are there some funds that are more restricted than others? For example, do you have the ability to make decisions about what you spend dollars on within the airport for different types of physical improvements, different parts of the experience?
So I understand the question. So we actually have wide discretion to decide, where to spend our money. This year, our total budget will be about $2.4 billion, and so we're a $2.5 billion business with 3,000 employees, and then on top of that, another $1 to $2 billion in capital. So like any other business, the executives look at how to allocate that capital. So we have wide discretion on how to allocate that capital, to meet the airport's needs and the city's goals. But 100% of that must remain on the airport. So we have zero discretion in that respect.
Gotcha. Okay. I may have others, but I will step aside for a moment.
Councilwoman Hernandez.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. I have a few questions, but to follow up on the conversation with Councilmember McCosker, so you're saying that, you transfer LAWA police officers out to the field from these civilian posts, correct? If what you're trying to moves forward successfully.
We're working with the union that represents those employees to go through a process to do that. But the end result, if we're successful, is that 48 police officers would go back to doing, higher value police work on the streets, of LA, of our community. And then we could potentially backfill them. We would backfill them with city civilians, union city civilians. We're hopeful that we could get a lot of them from LAPD if they're forced to lay off their civilians, because we think the skill sets would be complementary. So if we can work quickly enough on this, we could potentially save the jobs. But irrespective of that, we have to make that move, because when the train opens, we need more police and security officers to properly secure that train on behalf of Angelino's Councilwoman.
Wonderful. Thank you for explaining that to me. And the reason I ask is because we've already seen in our LAPD letter that we received that if we were to remove these civilian positions within LAPD, then it would be LAPD officers in those civilian positions, which would cost us 2 to 3 times the amount. And so I don't want to put the city in a position where you are all currently at, which is paying for higher amounts for that work. And so if I could just urge you all to look at other positions or look other places in the city, I think me and my colleagues are going to do our best to try to preserve those positions, because we can't afford it. And so I just wanted to uplift that I hear you, and I'm glad that y'all are moving in the same direction, but if you could just be a little more cautious and intentional, because we don't want to be in that situation moving forward. Just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you very much. And we did a multi-month study to identify these positions. We worked with the police and the command staff, because they know best, what is, higher value police work and what work could be backfilled. And then we also looked at, police departments, airport police departments across the country to make sure we're aligned with the best practices in safety and security.
Thank you for all that work. Thank you. I have 2 more questions. GSD, or was first most of a statement, sorry. GSD, BSS, BSL, and ITA are all showing zero revenue projections for the upcoming fiscal year. I'd like to take a closer look at that and better understand the assumptions made behind these figures. What work did these entities do for the Department of Airports this fiscal year? Do you see that continuing in the coming fiscal year?
I'm going to have to defer to my colleague. I don't know the answer to that question.
Yes, I don't think LAWA has GSD doing work for us, and I don't ITA either. We do have MOUs and agreements in place with the Bureau of Contract Administration, and we have an MOU in place to reimburse them for those services, as well as fire and LAPD.
Great, thank you. So there, in the past budgets, there hasn't been other MOUs with these other departments?
No, you said ITA, GSD, and who else?
GSD, BSS, BSL, and ITA.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Can I get a budget memo on that, please? And
Sure.
Thank you so much. In contrast, personnel had a sharp multi-million-dollar increase in reimbursements from the Department of Airports. Do you know what caused this increase, and how do you anticipate that continuing into the next coming fiscal year?
I don't know specifically what that was about. We can report back on that, though.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'd like that information as a budget memo. Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Councilmember Blumenfield.
Thank you, and thanks for being here. I want to drill down a little bit more on something that Tim was talking about in terms of some of the startling statistics you gave us, the 97th worst, third highest cost. Also, I know we have a increased 138% cost on the cost per enplanement, and we're having this slow, well, I have it written here, the airline cost per enplanement have increased 138% since fiscal year 2019. Is that not true?
That seems high.
What's that?
I can check.
She's going to check the figures.
Okay. And so we're trying to understand, why our costs have gone up, if that's related to why our overall numbers enplanements have gone down, or is there a cycle there where we increase the cost and then less planes come and it kind of feeds on itself? What are the real drivers? Not just obviously the international stuff. We all know Trump's tearing us up in terms of international tourism, but we're also seeing domestic tourism down. So and this is very much budget related, not just for LAWA, but this is the driver of our economy here, and all of our numbers. So what are the reasons for that, and are there things within our own airport that we can do to help turn that trend around?
So there was a lot in there. So I'm gonna first just really briefly on the cost per enplanement, and we'll get you accurate figures for the rate of increase over periods of time. We can put that in a report to you. But because the cost per enplanement, the denominator is enplanement. So if your denominator goes down by 14%, the number gets bigger, right? So that the lack of enplanements has really hurt us because we have less enplanements to spread our overall cost across.
Doesn't that sort of create a cycle of then more people don't come because it costs more, and then we have fewer and it costs more?
That is the concern. I mean, as I said, it's okay to, pre-pandemic, the two higher cost airports are New York airports. That shouldn't surprise anybody in this country, and we're the third highest cost. Pre-pandemic, that was okay because we were generating much higher revenues, so you could absorb the higher cost. Now, for a variety of reasons, our market is not as attractive, so the revenues are lower and the economics simply don't work. And you asked for some of the reasons, and it's a variety of reasons. International is down. We relied on Asia quite a bit. We were one of the main gateways to Asia, and with Asia trade and traffic down, we're more exposed to that than most airports. But even on the domestic side, as you mentioned, there have been structural shifts in the market. During the pandemic, the U.S. airlines, the big four airlines, fundamentally reshaped their networks, and they retreated more to their kind of fortress hubs. And we're not a hub, we're a spoke. So, so that macro dynamic played against us. Within California, there is a sentiment from people not in California that it's a difficult business climate. We've made it hard for people people to succeed here. So capital is making choices. That when we go to airlines and try to convince them to serve our city, we're showing them the future. They're investing several $100 million asset and many years of operating expenses, marketing to develop that market. So they're very interested in kind of the 3, 5, and 10-year horizon. And when they see us actually shrink, our population base shrinking right now, that is the opposite of what they want to hear. So there are a lot of factors, a lot of headwinds, kind of against us right now. And there's literally a dozen different things that are kind of conspiring against us. You mentioned one thing, what can we do? Because we don't just sit back and wait for things to change. That's not how we operate. One thing that, because we pre-pandemic we were more popular, I guess I will say, we've never had a sales team for LAX. Most of the world's airports that we compete with, including the one I just came from, had an actual sales team that's job it is to travel the world and convince airlines to come serve our market. We kind of took, and New York was a similar sentiment, we're New York, we're LA, who's not going to serve us? Well, the answer is right now, 14% less service, less passengers. So we've put together a sales team, and we're growing that sales team. I will say within the city system, it is very, very, very difficult. At my old place, the sales team would have been established in 90 days. We're a year into it, and we're struggling because within the city system, it's difficult to hire the expertise needed to put together an airline sales team because the city system is not designed to generate that type of talent. So there's a variety of factors, council member, that are, I would say, conspiring against us.
Great. Well, we want to try to help with the ones that we can control. And by the way, is this sales team selling the airport, or are they just selling the region?
They both, but no passenger airline wants to fly to an airport. They want to access a market. So we're really out there selling the region and the market. And that's California, that's Southern California. In my previous place, the team that did that was part of my responsibility. So I've done that for a very long time. And you really are selling the regional economy. You're selling the future, is what you're trying to convince them of.
And will they work with convention and tourism and all the departments? I mean, it seems like you don't want to be. We have other folks doing that same kind of thing. We should all be coordinating, obviously.
We absolutely should all be coordinating. I mean, nobody has as many resources as they would want. We all want more resources, so we absolutely have to coordinate those resources and use them as efficiently as possible.
Well, I just want to open it up to, are the things that we can do here in the city to make it easier for you to succeed and for the airport to succeed, please? And it's not going to be a budget memo, but maybe it's just a special memo, or I don't even need a memo. Just know that we want to help. So if there are tweaks that we can make, or tweaks in this budget, let us know. I, for one, and I know everyone here recognizes the importance of the airport as a driver of our economy here.
Thank you. We actually have a comprehensive set of recommendations that we're going to be bringing forward in the next several weeks. We heard, I was here, I think, two weeks ago today when the mayor delivered her State of the City, and, it was a call to action where, we have to do things differently. If not now, when? And LAWA has been working very hard for the last couple of months, actually predating that. But when we heard her call, we redoubled our efforts, and in a few weeks, we're going to put forth a series of recommendations, some of which we'll need your support for. So we look forward to sharing those with you.
Great. And last thing, you talked about the general fund positions to absorb, which is great, and we appreciate any effort on that. We want to see all of our folks, if anybody does get laid off, to be able to go to another portion of LA. But is there also contract work that the city could be doing to help bolster the city, whether it's BOE or construction forces or city services, that may be able to be essentially hired by LAWA to help uphold some of those departments that are suffering right now?
It's a great question, and I'm at the edge of my lane on this, but my teammates are working with BOE and some of those agencies on ways that we could potentially absorb those workers if they are laid off and displaced. We have, in some cases, LAWA.
I'm not talking about the displaced workers aspect. I'm talking about literally contracting with the city to do some of the LAWA work.
Oh, we do actually, we do a lot of that already. That was, the $1 billion that we've reimbursed the city for. We do quite a bit of that already. We're always looking for ways that we could do more. And some of our proposals that we'll be bringing in the next few weeks will be ways that would be, revenue neutral or positive, and city employee positive. And so we hope to get support for those. We have some ideas there that would reduce our burden on the city and allow us to be more successful on behalf of the city.
Great, thank you.
Councilwoman Hutt.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for being here. But I really was listening to you talk about the studies about the downward trend in our city. So in your studies, does construction and congestion have anything to do with that? And do you believe that once we're, up and at 'em, we'll trend back up again?
I honestly don't, council member. I don't think it has anything to do with our construction. I mean, there are airports around the country that have major construction projects and major congestion that are thriving. So I think it has anything to do with our construction, unfortunately.
I was hoping you'd say, yep. Then
I more than anybody, I would hope that we had an easy answer for this. But as I mentioned earlier, there's a dozen different factors that are really conspiring against us that we need to attack all at once.
like my colleagues, we're here to help. I want you to be assured of that. I just have another question about completion. How soon do you think the people mover will be done?
It's scheduled, the passenger service availability date that we negotiated last summer is December 8th. We still believe we can get it delivered by December 8th, but as I've said previously, we don't intend to put it in service with actual customers until early in the following year, early in 2026. We'll put it in service. No airport or no major agency would try to turn something on 2 weeks before Christmas, so we're going to get it done, put it to bed for a few weeks, and then we'll get after it after the holidays, and we'll put it together, put it in use sometime after the first of the year.
Thank you. That's all, Madam Chair.
Councilwoman Hernandez.
Thank you. Chairwoman, I would like to make those two budget memo requests actually just a special study, if possible.
Wonderful.
Thank you. And to include, if y'all could include any recommendations on how we can better our reimbursement process. I hear that you're having a hard time hiring people, but yet we're putting more into the personnel department for receipts, right? So just want to understand more of what that looks like, and if there's any ways that we can facilitate that process so we can get reimbursed faster, or just make sure that we can get our money so we can move our city forward too. But that's it. Thank you, Chairwoman.
I want to say that the personnel department has been really great to work with. Ms. Billups and her team, we're working very collaboratively with them, so I don't want to take any of the comments I made to be...
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
We're seeing it throughout the city in all our departments. It's been a struggle. And I just want to make a comment. Last night I was at LAX, and I was dropping someone off for their flight, and it was probably one of the easiest times. And I don't, if you love somebody, if you're going to take them to LAX, I think everybody in LA knows that. But I was like, let's go check it out. And I just want to say that from going just a couple years ago to now, there is a big difference. The flow of people was good. I dropped them off at Bradley, in the Bradley terminal. So I just want to uplift that it does look a lot better, and it was a lot more fluid. So y'all are moving forward. So thank you.
That's very kind of you to say. Our team is working really, really hard, and I guess I would say if you're impressed now, give us a couple of years, and what you see. We released a video a couple of weeks ago. The future is incredibly exciting for our airport, and notwithstanding some of the negative comments in my remarks, we will be ready for the Olympics. We will be ready for the Paralympics. We're going to be ready for the World Cup. We will be ready, and we will show up, and we will be excellent on behalf of this city.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you. Councilmember Blumenfield.
Yeah. One more question. This is more just getting your advice, which is, we're dealing with a convention center right now and some critical decisions on it, and it's a major P3. You've just undertaken the biggest P3 we've seen in a very, very long, in our history probably, and did experience some cost overruns and some delays and a number of things. I mean, it's an incredible project. Is there any thoughts or advice as we start to contemplate whether to go this route before the Olympics, whether that's realistic, and can we move forward on that. You have a very unique bird's eye view into how those P3s work. So just to get your advice on something that is massively will affect our finances.
Thank you for that question. And first of all, I think that, rebuilding the convention center to put a world-class convention center that this city deserves is absolutely the right move. We actually, our LAWA team was in front of the Triple T committee just recently testifying on that same issue. And so we actually have extensive, advice that we can offer any city agency that wants our help. We've offered that previously. But in general, what we said is, I think, we are involved in a P3 that is not going the way we would want it to. It's going to be more than 2 years late, and it's going to be over budget. But what we said, and I'm an economics major, not an engineer, but what we said in general was that a P3 is an excellent structure, but getting the structure right up front, and it's the contracting mechanism that is everything, is absolutely critical. So we don't want the city to interpret our difficulties with our P3 as all P3s are bad. A P3 can be the right delivery mechanism for a project, but you have to get the right partner and you have to have the right contracting vehicle. And again, we offered some pretty extensive comments on it. We'd be happy to come brief anybody who would like on our specific lessons learned.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That was very helpful for you to be in Triple T at that last meeting, and I do look forward to the memo or the suggestions that y'all are making on things we can do immediately and things we can do to restructure and things we can do in the charter. We talked about that extensively, and I really, really appreciate it. I just want to give you an opportunity to spend a couple of minutes to go into dangerous territory, because it's something that's going to be coming up in committee and council soon, and that's the living wage at the airport. I want you to spend a couple of minutes just describing what are the observations you might make or the expectations you might have should that pass, and where your revenues will go, up or down, where your experience at the airport will go, up or down. Good luck.
Thank you for the opportunity, Councilmember McCosker. Look, what I've said previously is that you have to look at, if you look at it from a LAWA perspective, it will not impact, our P&L at all in the short term. Over the long term, it absolutely will. But as I said in our remarks, while we are very strong right now, our business partners are suffering. Our local business partners, our global business partners, they are suffering. And what I shared previously is that 100% of the business partners who've expressed an opinion on the effect of that ordinance to me have said it will hurt their business, and they will do less business in Los Angeles over the long term if that passes, because of the additional pressure we'll put on their costs. That is what our partners are telling me. We are very concerned because we already have partners that are in difficulty. This council approved a relief package last year for some of our concessionaires that basically kept them afloat, and that was even before this ordinance. And we will be bringing a similar package for additional concessionaires in the not too distant future this summer, because of pressure they are already under. So again, I think, I know that they have spoken for themselves and provided data, but every single one has expressed to me that a further increase in the minimum wage will hurt their ability to do business at our airport. And if it does, we'll be forced to try to replace them. And in this environment, replacing a long-time business partner who is experienced in our operations, knows how to do things, if they can't succeed, I think it's going to be challenging to replace them with someone who is miraculously going to do better coming in new. So it could put us in significant jeopardy. And for us, long term, that would likely lead to less airline flights, less revenues, and it becomes kind of a downward spiral. That is what that we are concerned about. Again, even with the comments, all the comments I made, that previously that were seen as gloomy, those don't take into account the living wage. Those are the headwinds we currently face today, and the living wage our partners are telling us would put further headwinds in front of them. But again, LAWA itself does not have a position on the living wage. I'm telling you what our partners are telling us, and I believe them. I don't think they are bluffing.
Councilmember Blumenfield? Councilwoman Hernandez.
Thank you. I just remembered another thing that's, I think, really important to me is you are all one of the only regulatory authorities over autonomous vehicles. Can you share a little bit about what plans you might have to regulate them? Any conversations about a utilization fee to help generate revenue, perhaps to support some of the businesses in the airport? I would love to hear more about that, because as a city, we don't have the regulatory authority that you all have, been granted by the state.
So thank you for that question. We are in conversations with, in this case, Waymo is the only one that's ready right now. We're in conversations with them. They come fairly close to the airport. Right now, we don't think that it's possible to safely integrate them into our operations. I'm delighted that you had a great experience in the infamous horseshoe, but that's not the experience of all of our guests. So we're not going to put additional risk and strain into the horseshoe, but in our automated people mover project, we actually have dedicated areas at train stations for that type of activity. So our plan is when we open up the automated people mover, we'll integrate them into the operation with the other options like Uber and Lyft and taxis and limousines and all that kind of stuff. We have a dedicated area that will be built for them. So that is the plan.
Great. Can we get a special study? Thank you for sharing that update. Can we get a special study on what it looks like for LAWA to implement a utilization fee for autonomous vehicles?
We're not prepared to set a fee yet, but it would be similar to, we have access fees for Uber and Lyft, privilege fees, because they're accessing our market and they're benefiting from the, billions of dollars in investment that this city has made. So we're not prepared to share a fee yet, but we're happy to comply with with the study, but we may not be able to put a number in that.
Of course.
Yet. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right. Y'all asked all my questions. Thank you very much for being here. I know you don't have to be here. Haven't been here in the past. We really appreciate you coming in. It was a really helpful presentation. So thank you very much. It hasn't been traditional to have the proprietaries come in during budget. So we appreciate you being here.
We appreciate
Super
the
helpful.
opportunity to share. We're very proud of the men and women at LAWA and what they all do for the city, and looking forward to helping. So thank you.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you so much for the presentation. All right, colleagues. We are now going to move back to memos. As a reminder, as I noted at the top of today's meeting, we have a placeholder on the agenda for committee members to ask a department we've already heard from to come back to the table to answer any follow-up questions we all might have. Not to discuss their memos, which they haven't yet prepared, but simply if you realize there was a policy area you wanted to touch on but did not, and that is relevant to making budget decisions. So, colleagues, are there any departments